Hello ladies and gentlemen, Willie here. So then Phase 5, only one left to go after this now. That's a little bit daunting to think about, I guess. It's gone by pretty fast. Phase 5 was the biggest phase we're going to get new content-wise, and indeed it turned out to be just as expected. Not only the most new content coming in-game, like new enchants, the raids and so on, but for sure the most player-created content, I'd say, even outdoing Phase 2, and it's been some very memorable player-created content at that. But before we go into that, let's go over most of the non-Silphus stuff that happened this patch. The dungeon loot reworks, complete with us finding out that Blizzard decided to put in all the Librams, totems, and idols into the game this patch, despite a bunch of them not being added until 1.11 in vanilla, which I can't help but think is just an oversight. Not exactly the end of the world though, so whatever. We also now have far more spell penetration items in the game, new enchants, weapon oils, the class books, giving us new ranks of abilities, and well, player power has never been this high before in Classic. Of course you get quite a bit stronger with each new phase, but AQ is that real turning point where people start to do silly amounts of damage. I mean, things were already pretty crazy since the early phases, especially people who ranked early on were on a totally different power level compared to those even decked out in Blackwing Lure gear. But with the arrival of all these new power sources and AQ40 gear with crazy amounts of stats, really powerful gear has started to become available to everybody and from a much easier source than ranking too. And if you think things are starting to get a bit out of hand now, just wait for Naxxramas, where itemization in of itself is just a whole lot more correct and complete, and each class's tier set really caters to exactly what it's designed to do and let you excel in PvE and PvP. Well, at least for most classes, or as long as you like healing, I guess. There's a reason that resilience was made a thing in the Burning Crusade, not just to give players the best source of gear from that activity that they are playing, Shadowlands take notes, but also to make sure that with the item scaling throughout the expansion, the game just didn't turn into whoever fires the first shot has a pretty decent chance to just delete somebody. But the big draw, the key bit of new content in this phase has to be AQ. Most people were excited about the content within the raid, but I have to say the real content came beforehand with the war effort and the Scepter quest lines. Put together a huge number of people trying to relive childhood dreams, bugs, a desert, all in an open world PvP setting, which is somewhat time gated, and you have a recipe for chaos. Total chaos. It's strange. Whilst it's fun to look in at this kind of stuff and maybe experience for a little bit, I don't think I'd want this kind of event to be going on all the time. The opening of the gates of AQ created so many stories from different servers. It gave off that real feeling of the MMORPG genre that you don't really hear about so much these days, or, well, not from WoW anyway. Of course, every server has its own quirks and so on, but not on the same level as it was during the war effort and the Scepter quest lines. You can probably tell me a story from your server, and I'd have a completely different one to tell you from mine. That's what makes it such a memorable thing. Of course, the first gongs were wrong with the reset, the whole Scepter questline completed in a day, and all of the war effort itself had done mere hours on some servers. Amazing, yet by this point nothing short of expected by how hard top-end guilds push in Classic. Entire factions banded together to punish the opposite one for not putting up their side of the bargain when it came to turning in items for the war effort. The Horde locked down in Ironforge on Gandling to make sure the war effort wasn't started in the middle of the night. Something similar happened on Wormthalak. After weeks of grinding materials due to shortages, it was found that a smaller force had been keeping materials back to turn in last minute to start the war effort at a more convenient time. And well, that just wasn't gonna fly, leading to another 10-hour war in Ironforge to stop turn-ins before the real 10-hour war began. Perhaps the most memorable drama though was from the server Sulphurus, where a guild that had contributed an enormous amount to the war effort decided, after the fact that they had completed the initial part of their Scepter, the 42,000 Carapace fragments part, that they were now going to grief the guilds that they had been previously in collusion with. At one point mass reporting an opposite faction Scarab Lord as they began a later part of the Scepter questline, causing them to get temporarily banned before Blizzard eventually overturned it. This was pretty widely shared around media sites and just across the internet in general, and people were mad, like really mad. And Sulphurus Horde banded up to grief the griefers, preventing the final stage for the Scepter from being turned in at Anachronos. And as the 10-hour war raged, meaning despite all the effort that they'd put in, the server decided that them turning against those they had worked with in collusion just wasn't going to fly, and as a result, they didn't get a Scarab Lord. Collusion though, that little factor as well. It came as a shocker for some people, but it was very widespread, and Horde and Alliance players decided to leave each other well alone so they could farm some bugs. Or at least those guilds that were part of the collusions at least. Same faction griefing was all over the place with polymorphs to heal people, mind controls to prevent deaths, selective targeting, pulling guards to players, you name it, it happened in Phase 5. And it caused a lot of issues for a lot of players too. See, if you weren't in the collusion loop, you were going to find yourself not having any realistic chance to get a Scarab Lord, even though you may have been preparing for a long time. But wait, there's more drama. Many players were even banned for farming too much for the war effort. It's literally Blizzard saying, well, on one hand you need hundreds and hundreds of thousands of materials, but on the other, you go too hard farming, well that must be a bot then, here's a ban for you. I believe most were overturned, but you heard about this kind of thing happening all of the time. A more recent one now, affecting smaller servers at that, ones where there's been a bit more difficulty turning in the insane number of materials needed for the war effort. Blizzard had previously assured us that there would be some slow and steady auto turn-ins to get these servers across the line, and so they waited and waited. As many of the servers got the gates open, there was no progress happening there. But for all of the drama around the big servers who tried to get the gates open as soon as possible, many others had a bit more coordination and so many Scarab Lords, more than you would believe. All of the various server drama that went on, the Scarab Lords being denied, it was like the top-end ranking drama crammed into the space of a few weeks that went widespread across each server. Fairbanks had 49 Scarab Lords, and the crazy Russians over on Flamegore managed to put together 90 Scarab Lords before the 10-hour war concluded. That's nearly 3.8 million Silithid carapace fragments, in case you were wondering. Enough about the event though. What about AQ40? How about when them gates were opened? Players went in with crazy levels of preparation in terms of having all the resistance gear, the consumables, the world buffs, and quite predictably mowed down the content like it was nothing. There were certainly some challenges in there still, notably Twin Emperors, Cthulhu, and especially two of the optional bosses, Oro and Viscidus. It was still certainly a step up in difficulty, regardless of how difficult it was in of itself when compared back to Blackwing Lair and Molten Core. And I'd say Molten Core still has some trash which can wipe you a lot easier than anything else in the game. Not to underestimate it, or indeed AQ40, because underestimating any raid is a great way to get yourself a nice grey screen and a run back. And just as I did a look back after near 2 weeks from the launch of Phase 5, just under half the guilds that defeated Scarab also did so on Cthulhu, yet only a quarter of guilds could beat Viscidus early on. And I'm very sure we're going to see this kind of trend of less and less people being able to complete a full raid, especially when Naxxramas comes around, so I'm looking forwards to that. Overall, AQ40's been pretty cool so far. I like the fact you get a mount too and the actual size of the place, but I probably like it more than the average person because as a warlock I actually am able to get spell hit chance now, and having your spells actually hit is pretty cool. The drama was pretty entertaining, more so because we knew it wasn't going to go on forever. I think the lengths people will go to get a mount and later a title. I'll be doing my preparation for Phase 6 video soon enough, the final phase of Classic at that. Naxxramas is going to be super interesting, very keen to get my hands on Tier 3, can't wait. And then, well, the seemingly inevitable TBC release really. Got to do a review on Phase 6 before that, and of course, a review of Classic as a whole. That's going to be one monster video though, I already know. So look out for those to come sooner or later. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be seeing you in the next one very soon. If you like what you see, do give the video a like and subscribe, as there will be plenty more to come. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.